Okay, good morning. My name's Gary Matsuoka, and we're here at Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. And today's topic is going to be growing apricots, apriums, and cherries. These are some of my favorite fruits. So in our climate in Orange County, we have a fairly mild climate, and all the stone fruits, which include apricots, apriums, and cherries, do require a minimum chill requirement in the winter to bloom well and get a lot of fruit, and to even leaf out well. And most apricots don't grow here very well at all. Now, it does matter where you live. The geography of even your little neighborhood makes a big difference. So in Orange County, we've got hills, little gullies, flat areas, and major rivers. Santa Ana River goes through Orange County. Some smaller rivers do too. And the cold air does collect. So in the wintertime, the chill that you need, the cold air does go down the hills into these little gullies, and it does flow into the riverbeds. So if you're within a half a block or a few blocks of the Santa Ana River, you can probably grow half the apricots that are sold, including the most famous apricot, which is the Royal from England. Because those areas, and in the little canyon areas too, in the hills, you'll get 400 hours that they need of chill. So chill on plants is you get chill between 34 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And you have less chill at either end per hour, and you have maximum chill right in the middle. So if you get a lot of 40-degree weather, 45-degree weather, which we've had in the last few weeks, we think the chill requirement, the chill we've collected so far this winter is probably getting close to 250 hours or so. I haven't looked it up, the official records yet. We'll see. But as far as the conventional chill, there's two ways of doing chill. Conventional is 34 to 45. And the more accurate chill is between 34 and 55, just less chill at either end, most maximum chill in the middle. And we've had quite a bit of weather below 55. In fact, some of our days we've had, say, 12, not even 15 hours below 55 degrees the last few weeks. So that's helping our chill numbers get up there. So the Royal apricots needed around 400 hours of chill, and all we were seeing is along all the riverbeds they were doing okay, but not anywhere else. Hilltops, terrible chill there compared to the lower spots. So the main apricot we're carrying right now is one called Tropic Gold. This was discovered or identified in just before 2000 in a orchard near Ventura, Camarillo. And this guy was growing royal apricots in his orchard. And one of his trees in his parking lot, he didn't remember if he had planted that or if a bird planted a seed there, was real heavy loaded every year, never failed. And it seemed to bloom and ripen 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the orchard. Now, 2 weeks of chill is quite substantial. So that became Tropic Gold apricot, which we started carrying about 15 years ago. And so far, this apricot appears to be the lowest chill. I mean, there's other apricots we carry. One apricot we carry, Gold Kissed. We've given up on all the rest, because the ones that were supposed to do well here, Katie, Garden Annie, we tried these, never got any fruit. Katy does well along the riverbeds. That's where it's been doing okay. And Florigold. We've given up on Florigold, never seen any fruit on it, so we gave up on it this year. But we still do these two. So 20, 25, 30 years ago, Gold Kiss was our best apricot. Probably the fruit is not considered, in most books, it's considered mediocre fruit. I grew it for 20 years and still heads or tails above the stuff at the supermarket. I mean, even if one fell on the ground and split in half, I saved the pieces and ate them. I mean, I didn't find anything bad about Gold Kiss at all. It's perhaps not quite as mellow flavored or as, I'm not sure what you would call it. It's a little crispier than, say, Royal Apricots, but there's nothing wrong with Gold Kiss. We kids can't find it. It does develop cracks on fruit getting hit by the sun, but that happens in a lot of fruit. So I didn't find anything wrong with it at all. But the chill on this one seems to be about 350 hours, and it went a good 10 years between 2014 and 2021, I would say, without any crops. And when they don't get enough chill, they don't leaf out till August. So, some people would just pull them out of the ground. They think they're dead if they hadn't leafed out by July. Tropigold, on the other hand, has never missed fruiting every year, although on years with little or no chill, it doesn't make much. But still, what we've seen with Tropigold is it wakes up at the right time around April, and it blooms a bit even if there's no chill, and it still makes some fruit that are good. Whereas all the other apricots we've tried, if there's not enough chill, again, they do nothing until August. But Tropigold, it's listed at 350. We think it's 300 or less, because it always wakes up. Even when we had less than 300 hours of chill, it still woke up and still made a few fruit. So that's been our most reliable one. And because it is closely related to Royal, it is considered a better apricot than Gold Kiss. So this year we have a lot of Tropigolds available, and most of them are quite nice looking. Something like this already has, I can see some flower buds on some of the stems. This would be a plant that's a year and a half from being grafted, but the little buds on this branch are flower buds. Some flower buds here, some here. So this can make a few fruit this year. The way apricots are usually trained would be about like this, a fan shape, all the branches going away from each other. And what we would do to keep them productive is make sure that the distance between branches is about a foot. So in this plant here, you can probably cut out this branch, and maybe between these two cut out one of them, maybe this one in the middle, so that sunlight can get in here. So what apricots and cherries do is they make these little short branches, similar to this and this, little short branches that grow flower buds along the longer stems. So as they grow out, they'll make these little short branches in the interior that'll make clusters of fruit on them, and those are better than having the fruit out here. The ones on the ends are more subject to sunburn. So the interior little branches, they're called fruiting spurs, that start developing on the branches are the ones that are the most viable. This tree is not quite old, being only a year and a half old, it hasn't made too many yet. There's a few, like we can say this is a fruiting spur here. And that said, don't let your kids climb in your apricot tree. They'll be breaking off all these little fruiting spurs on the branches. The other thing about apricots is that they are about, so again, the only training you do is make sure that you thin out the branches so the sunlight can get in here to keep these small fruiting branches leafy and viable. If it gets too dense, these branches start dying off because not enough light is getting in the interior. Otherwise, to make fruit, they'll have to grow bigger and bigger and bigger every year. Apricots, if you don't trim them, will grow about 15 to 20 foot. They'll fruit at 4 foot. If you want to keep it 4 foot high all its life, it'll fruit as long as you have sunlight available to this. Now the apricots do form on stuff they grew last year. So during the year, they'll put on 3 or 4 foot of growth during the summer that has no fruit on it, because the fruit's down here on this older growth. And all summer long, if it's getting too tall and too wide, you just keep clipping that off. So around June, July, August, September, clip off the real long growth that you don't want. And then in the fall, all the foliage that's here in the fall, including the foliage on these little branches, will be collecting energy from the sunlight in the fall to make the flower buds for next year. So we don't want you doing high control in the winter. If you allow it to be 10 foot tall in the winter, say 3 or 4 feet higher than you plan to have it fruit at, and you clip all that foliage off in the winter, well, that was your best fruiting wood up there, because you had left it in the fall to collect the sunlight, and this inside here was being shaded by all that up there, and then if you get rid of that, these down here are not as good. So do your height control before fall, or at least in early fall. Let this area get a lot of sunlight in the fall, and then you'll get good crops down here. Now what's interesting about chill is that if you have a lot of chill during the winter, because I used to have an apricot tree that was about 20 foot tall. We just let it be, well, it was right around 18. We just left it alone because we're using it as a shade tree. It is a nice thing about apricots is they're considered the prettiest of the fruiting trees, in that their leaves are shaped like this and they flutter. So they're quite attractive fruit trees, shape-wise too. They're quite attractive. So we let ours be bigger, but we noticed that if the winter was not very warm, or not very cool, and they didn't have much chill, the bottom branches fruit the heaviest because air is colder closer to the ground in the wintertime. So the first, especially if there's no wind, the air at ground level is going to be even 5 degrees colder than the air 10 foot above the ground. So we noticed on the warmer winters, only the bottom branches were fruiting for us. But on the colder winters, when we had a lot of chill those winters, the tops were all the fruit was heaviest on the top branches because they had the most sunlight. So a couple things to consider there too. The lower you keep your tree, the more chill all the branches will get.
So you adjust that height you said in June, July?
Summertime. Because spring and summer, fruit trees are just programmed to grow, grow, grow. Fall, they're programmed to store energy for next year's crop. So heavy pruning in the summer for height control. Wintertime we thin out the branches so the sunlight can get in the interior area. You can do that thinning in the summer if you want. No, that's true. Well, the fruit is off. The fruit is off by early summer.
Well, ours is like between June and July. The tree's like 10 years old. Even if you don't plant it, it produces beautiful and hundreds and hundreds. But I'm afraid to stop it when it's no wind. So as I wait till after the fruit is off, you do it.
Right, right. Now with stone fruits and apricots are included, they're not real good about heavy pruning. So if you have an old tree and you cut it real short, you're going to shorten its life. Apricots usually live 30 years or so. and heavy pruning can shorten that. So it's nice. It's easier. Well, it's healthier to keep a small tree small than it is to let it get big and then cut it short. So.
And the branches down below have gotten real thick.
Mm-hmm. So what apricots tend to do over time is when they're fruiting, these branches, because of the way the fruits start dropping down. So at our house, because we're using it as a shade tree along a sidewalk, we would eventually cut off the lowest branches on the tree. The tree would make new ones in the center, and then they would slowly get weighed down and then grow new ones in the middle again as these weighed themselves down. So that's one of the ways that they naturally do. If you keep your tree small, most of these branches won't be too heavy and they won't get weighed down. But that on older trees or in traditional orchards, that would happen. So you can keep these, the most productive size for almost any fruit tree, again, is about 5-6 foot across. So if you can keep this tree not much bigger than this, it'll make more fruit per square foot of this tree than it would if it was, like our tree was, about 15 foot wide and 18 foot tall. Of course, the big tree makes more fruit, but per square foot, it'll make more if you keep them smaller, but you need, 3 or 4 or even 5 trees to cover that same amount of area that one big tree would cover, but the smaller trees would eventually would make more fruit. So tropical, gold-kissed, fairly low, tropical we trust the most. If you live along a riverbed, you can grow royals. We don't carry them, but most riverbeds, they'll work. I mean, the chill we get in the winter has been going up and down for a long time. I mean, don't believe people who tell you that the weather is getting warmer forever, because it's happened in the past. So what we know about Orange County is that they used to have big apricot orchards of royal apricots in Lake Forest, where we used to be. And they said they were so successful in Lake Forest back in the 19-teens, they were sending dried apricots to soldiers in World War I in Europe. And then right around 1920, it got so warm that all the apricot trees would not leaf out, would not make fruit. They just pulled them all out in the 1920s because it was so hot in the 1920s. And the hottest temperatures ever recorded supposedly in the U.S. were in the 1920s and 30s, the Dust Bowl time. And so they replanted that area with orange groves. They said, well, it's so warm here, we'll plant tropical fruit, oranges. And when we moved into that area in the 60s, those orange groves were still there. But so it got real warm in the 1930s and 40s, cooled off in the 50s, warmed up in the 70s and 80s, cooled off in the late 80s. In fact, the cold temperature records for Orange County were 1990. We hit 23 degrees throughout Orange County for 2 mornings. We hit 23 degrees 4 hours every morning. We couldn't believe it. We had ice this thick on the ground. Those were nasty. And then it gradually warmed up from there until, say, 2016, 2014, and then it gradually cooled off. It's gradually cooling off again, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's apricots. Any questions on apricots? Most of apricots ripen June, July, and it's different every year. Every year they bloom at a little different time because we warm up at different times, and they ripen at different times. Slightly. It's not a huge number. It's like within about a month. Four feet. down to 4 feet. Although I would say, a reasonable height is more like 6 or 7. You can still reach it and pick it easily from the ground. So
They don't ripen the same time.
not too good. Apricots have about a 3 or 4 day window of picking, because they'll just fall off. Yeah. Fridge okay for a long time. Most fruits, if you don't want them to over ripen, you put them in a Ziploc bag, squeeze out the air, put them in the refrigerator. But the oxygen makes them keep ripening. So, okay. So there's a company called, family called Zager, who's a famous company that breeds stone fruit. They breed a lot of things, but they're famous for their stone fruit. They actually bred gold kissed. So what they do is they don't do any GMO stuff, in a lab where they take genes from other things and put them in plants. But they do pollinate different types of fruits together and different apricots together. They said they do about 50,000. They plant about 50,000 seeds that result from that, or they do 50,000 crosses every year. And if they get 1 or 2 of those to look like something that's good, they're successful. So, there's chance seedlings. A lot of fruits are just chance seedlings that come up out of the ground. A bird planted them. So you can figure, okay, 1 out of 40, 50,000 are decent or improved. Let's put it that way. So this gold kissed, or this tropical, was a chance seedling. The gold kissed apricot was one that Zager family did, and they got one that at that time was fairly low chill. This one we think is better, this chance seedling. But apriums are something else they do too. So apriums are a cross between apricots and plums. The 50-50 apricot plum hybrid, if you take an apricot and a plum, just cross them together, you get a plum cot. But those didn't turn out to be very good. So they've taken those plum cots and crossed them back with apricots and got apriums, which are roughly 2/3 apricot, 1/3 plum, and those have turned out to be really, really good. And they've done the same with the plums, cross the plum cots with plums to get the pluots, and those have turned out to be very good too. So anyway, the apriums, now the interesting thing about a lot of these crosses they do is they say a lot of these crosses they have to do a embryo rescue. So if you cross an apricot and a plum, or an apricot and a plum cot, a lot of those, they don't expect the fruit to develop. So there's no seed, there's no fruit, and it's a failure. But what they do is they do what is called an embryo rescue. So they do a conventional crossing, and they said the embryo is fine, but the fruit won't develop properly with that cross. So they actually find the spent flower and open it up and take the embryo out of it before it dies, because the fruit's not developing properly, and they put it in a petri dish and grow the embryo. So a lot of these unusual crosses are done that way because it's the fruit is not viable, or the seed that doesn't make a seed or a fruit. So they rescued the embryo from the flower and they grow it in a lab. It's not modified, artificially, but they have to save it, and that's how they grow a lot of these really unusual things. So this is cotton candy aprium, which is our top-selling aprium. So this is about the size of an apricot, but it has a little more of a plum-like skin, and a a little bit juicier than regular apricot, but a lot of people really like it. I've eaten it once. Someone brought me some. It does need a little higher chill than we like to see, but if you live on flat ground or if you live in a riverbed area or in a canyon area, you'll do quite well with it. So they listed it around 400 hours. Of chill required on that one. So if you live on a hilltop, you would have got fruit last year. Last year, all throughout Orange County, we had plenty of chill. That was the coolest winter since 2008. We had close to 800 hours of chill last year. Really high chill. That was pretty crazy. This year, we'll probably make it to 300. We'll see. We got plenty of winter left, so 400 may not be a problem this year. It started late. This year, our winter started late. Everything was late this year. I mean, last year, spring started in June. Summer seemed to start in August. Winter didn't start till, well, like Dave Wilson told us, the reason they're late this year, we got our trees about a week and a half later, 2 weeks later than we do some years, because most of their trees are putting a new flush of leaves out in November. They said they've never seen it that late before. Everything about last year was behind schedule. So they got them dug up behind schedule. We're behind schedule this year. Winter seems to be behind schedule a little bit this year too. So we'll see how the rest of the chill goes and the rainy season goes with this year.
We recommend that you recommend all our other trees we bought here on the north side of the house. Is that the same tree that Apriums also?
Right. So yeah, we're just so marginal on chill here. A few degrees difference at night makes a huge difference in the amount of chill you get. So being on the north side of the building in the shade in the wintertime, it's a lot cooler on the north side in the winter than it is on the south side. In fact, all year it is too, but north side especially because the shade is more extended in the winter time. And it's the temperature of the buds themselves, not the branches, not the ground. It's the temperature of the bud that makes the difference on the chill. And the other thing you can do is paint these white. Put whitewash on them in the wintertime, and that'll also help keep them cool. Or you can even throw a shade cloth over them if you're in the sunny side of the yard, and that'll also help keep them cool, although the shade cloth at night keeps them warmer. So paint is actually a better thing. Just paint the buds white with some whitewash, and that would help keep the buds cooler, so they'll have a better chance of fruiting if you live in a warmer winter location, or if you want to make sure on the warmer winters that you get flowering and fruit production. So cotton candy is a big hit for a lot of our customers, although I wouldn't say, of anyone who lives on a hilltop, you may not get fruit that often unless the winters stay cool. We also do one called Leocott. The only reason I got this in is because my daughter's name is Leah, and the book said it's 500 hours or so is their estimated chill. Well, this fruited on a year that was less than 300 hours, so we actually think the chill on this is less than 300 hours because it had a really good crop 2 years ago, and we didn't have that much chill 2 years ago. It was right around 300 or less. So, but the Leocott in the nursery was just loaded, and the fruit is larger than an apricot. It's more like plum-sized fruit, so it looks like a giant apricot. Now, my daughter took the tree before the fruit was ripe and planted at her in-laws' place, so I never got to try it, but they said it was good. So Leocott seems to be a good aprium for there. We also have Flavor Delight. And this one seems to be 300 hours also. They claim it's better than an apricot. I've eaten it alongside Gold Kiss, and it wasn't hugely different. I'm not sure why we're, if there's a big reason to promote this over the apricots. So, but leocot certainly big fruit. And the chill on it, we don't know if it's as low as tropical apricot. It may be close. So, training wise, they look the same as the apricots. In fact, we train apricots and plums the same way. All right, the cherries we're still not real comfortable with. If you go on the Dave Wilson website, they're recommending for our area the Royal Crimson. It's not the lowest chill cherry, but it's the lowest chill, quote, self-fertile. And the hours they're listing on here would be 200 to 300 hours of chill. So they're not quite sure. They say it takes 10 years to figure out the chill and the pollination requirements. But 200 and 300 hours of chill. The problem is the plants are taking a long time to flower and fruit. I've only met one. This has been out since 2016. The tree we got in 2016 has never made a single fruit. It's bloomed a little bit, started making fruit, but it fell off before it was ripe. One of our customers says that they ate one last year, and it was good. But it's taken its time because we haven't met many customers who've had these now for 7-8 years who's gotten anything yet. Now, commercially, they don't harvest for 7 years. So it's not that unusual for that to be the case. And since this is a fairly new variety on top of that, the newer cultivars, genetically newer cultivars in the trade, and this is one of the last ones to be released that we know of, tend to take longer to make fruit than an older variety. Older varieties, genetically older varieties, tend to be more precocious on the young trees. So among the cherries that we sell, the Mini Royal is the lowest chill. We think that might be 200 hours. But the Mini Royal is not self-fertile. So this was back 20 years ago. Dave Wilson released Mini Royal and Royal Lee. And Royal Lee maybe around 300 hours as two cherries to make fruit in warm winter climates. Well, inland they get plenty of chill, and these two would bloom like a few days apart. But in Orange County, because we're real mild weather here, they're blooming a month apart, and it wasn't really doing well on cross-pollinating each other. So they brought out Royal Crimson to split the difference. We just haven't seen this one flower or fruit much yet. That's the problem. Now, the quality of Royal Lee is better than Mini Royal. Mini Royal, the flavor's fine. It's just it seems to be a soft flesh cherry, whereas Royal Lee's got a little more crispness to it. And again, I haven't eaten Royal Crimson yet. I don't know what to tell you on that one, since I haven't eaten that one yet. So we're telling people, well, maybe Royal Crimson and Royal Lee would be a good pair to have, because do we trust that Royal Crimson's totally self-fertile? Now, there's two other cherries we've been growing is Lapines and Brooks. We're out of, I think I've got one Brooks left today. So these three are from the Zyger company. Lapines is from Canada. it was never supposed to do well here. When this first appeared, the chill on it was 700 hours. But back in the 80s, I bought some cherries from Stark Brothers in Missouri, and the one that needed, it was called Star Crimson Cherry. I just decided to plant it and grow it, and it made fruit its second year. I was going, well, this is interesting. So I asked Dave Wilson Nursery, who grows all our fruit trees for us. I asked them, what do you think that was? Well, they said, well, we sell all the cherries to Stark Brothers to sell to the public. So they sent me the 3 cherries that they sell to Stark Brothers Nursery just to try out: Lapines, Craig's Crimson, and Stella. Lapines fruited the second year. So that was the one I had, was Lapines cherry from Canada. And it's supposed to be a self-fertile one. So we were selling that for 20 years. In my house, it never missed a year. But it always bloomed way after these guys. So we think the chillas might be high on it, but it always blooms and it always makes fruit. The problem we had with it in our yard was it never made more than about 100, 150 fruit on a tree with about an 8-foot diameter head that looked like it had 1,000 flowers. So we thought, well, maybe it's just partially self-fertile. Dave Wilson claims it's self-fertile. But we talked to somebody from back east who moved to California. They said in Connecticut, we don't consider that a self-fertile cherry. So apparently it's partially self-fertile. So we found Brooks. The recommendation for Brooks cherry was that it be pollinated by Lapine. So we figured these two must bloom at the same time. So we bought them Brooks. Brooks, it says 400 to 500 hours. Developed by UC Davis to be a low chill cherry. For the Central Valley, 400 hours is low chill. So Brooks, my daughter's who lives in Santa Ana, has already gotten fruit off her Brooks after a year. So we think Brooks may be, well, I don't know, this last year was 800 hours of chill. So we don't know what the chill is on Brooks yet. So hopefully these two will cross with each other and you'll get a bigger crop on Lapines. But Lapines is at least partially self-fertile. Brooks, we looked at the literature on this. The original literature didn't say if it was self-fertile or not. We've seen some nurseries that claim that is self-fertile, and other nurseries say you should pollinate it with other varieties. So we're not sure on Brooks at all yet if it is or not. So Brooks and Lapines may make a good pair too, although Lapines does fruit by itself, just not a huge, at least I haven't gotten the biggest crop. But even those years we had what were claimed to be less than 200 hours of chill, I think it would be a ball of white flowers like April or May every year. Just a great bloom on Lapines every year. There are some years I swear it shouldn't have bloomed because we had no winter and it still bloomed. Just didn't make as much fruit as I would think would make. So now it blooms a little too late for rollie. So if we have a real cool winter, really cool winter, all these may bloom at the same time. It's just when you have a winter that's cool, not so cool, cool, not so cool, not so cool, they tend to separate out because, we might have reached 200 hours in February and 300 hours in April and 350 hours late April, something like that. So, because we can still get 40-degree nights in April, so that'll separate them out further. But if we have a winter like last year, they may all bloom at the same time because last winter was so cool. Because what trees tend to do is they wake up during a warm spell as long as they've had enough cool. If there's no warm spell in the winter, they all stay sleeping until they, like last year, it was just so cool, they just stayed sleeping until maybe April and all woke up at the same time. Whereas, if we have warm weather next week, they're claiming it's supposed to be in the high 70s next week, the mini roll may wake up at that time, but not the rest. So we're still not sure what to recommend the most on the cherries. Again, lapines, I've always gotten fruit the second year. This is, a lot of our cherries come looking like this. This is Royal Crimson. Now on the cherries, we get two different rootstocks. This is on Mazard. So we get the Royal Crimson, the Brooks, all I have are on Mazard. That's the full-size rootstock. You can keep them cut to 4 feet. They'll still produce. They want to grow 20, 25 foot on their, if you don't prune them. The other cherry trees are all on Maxima 14, which is a semi-dwarf rootstock. They'll grow about 2/3 their normal size. That's about 10 to 15 foot if you don't trim them. We had a few Royal Crimsons on Maxima 14, but we were only allotted 10. Those are gone. So I have them on Mazard. And the Brooks is on Mazard. Everything else is on Maxima 14. On our apricots, we try to carry everything on standard rootstock. There are some things that come on citation, like cotton candy. The only rootstock they ever have it on is citation, which is considered a semi-dwarf rootstock. It doesn't really do much as far as height control. The research we've seen says it makes the trees narrower more than shorter, so you can fit them closer together. But the main reason they're promoting citation is because it handles wet clay better. The main reason we don't promote it as much is because it doesn't handle dry soil at all. It doesn't do well in drought. Whereas the standard rootstocks like Myro, Lovell, Nemagard, which are used on a lot of the stone fruits, we didn't lose any of them we had the 8-year drought from 2012 to 2017. Well, 5-year drought, where they told us to cut the water back by 20%. For our gardens, we did that. Everything on citation in my garden, whether it was apricot, plum, peach, nectarine, everything on citation died in that under those conditions. None of the other rootstocks suffered at all. So we know that citation likes it really wet. It needs it wet to do well. So note that. I mean, cotton candy, we can only get it on citation. There's some trees that only come on citation because that's the only rootstock they can grow on. So our Leocott Apriums are on citation. The cotton candies are on citation. So just make sure you don't let them ever get dry. Fertilizer-wise, now planting-wise, they're best in the ground. And as long as you've not had another stone fruit tree in that area in the past, just dig a hole, drop them in. They say when these things are planted in the orchards, they spend less than a minute planting each tree. So they said they have 2 guys digging a hole. It takes them just 20 seconds to dig the hole. They drop that tree in there. They got 2 guys covered up. Then they're on to the next tree. So it's pulling out. So the main thing you do when you plant these is check the roots. When we handle them, there can be some broken roots on them, and it's nice to get rid of the badly broken roots because they'll be a hindrance to the plant's health to have a broken root attached to the plant. We do get a lot of Central Valley mud brought down to Orange County here when we get these trees. This has got quite a bit of mud on there. Now, we have noticed in the past if there's a lot of mud on the root system, the trees do significantly better if you take it off. So the reason for that is because these trees are planted just inches apart in the field, so they have rows of thousands of trees that the next tree over may have been this far. So when they plow them out of the ground and you get some dirt with the tree, this dirt does contain remnants of cut roots from the adjacent trees. So if you wash that off, it'll help the health of these roots just a bit. Some plants are more sensitive, others like apples don't seem to be very sensitive to that at all, but some plants are more sensitive. Here's broken roots. So just check it, and if it's badly broken, this one is ready to fall off, so let's take that one off. And the ones on the bottom, I mean, these trees, they're tossed around in bundles of 5 or 10, and the roots on the bottom sometimes get broken, the roots on the side sometimes get broken. If you shake it, you can see things wobbling around more. Here's one, this one is broken. If I do that, you can see where it's wobbling there. Sometimes you just twist it, just break it off. And the graft on this tree is right here. They're usually grafted about 4 inches above the ground. Some trees are done higher than that. Some trees a little lower. But make sure you cover all the roots well. They usually say you can go anywhere from here to here in the depth on the ground. Don't cover the graft up. And don't put anything in the dirt. So the one problem we have with our customers sometimes where they lose a tree is they let their gardener plant it. And we'll get the tree, it's all dead, we'll smell it, it smells like a sewer, because what the gardeners tend to do is they tend to backfill the hole with pure planter mix or pure potting soil, thinking that it's helping the tree. And all the potting soils and planter mixes that we don't sell are basically ground up dead trees that are rotten. And if they backfill the hole with that stuff, it just rots the roots on a lot of plants. They do not like planter mix. They do not like most potting soils around the root zone. Our own potting soil, our top pot, doesn't have ground up dead trees in it. You could use that, but and that's only if you remove a dead stone fruit tree within the last 10 years in that area. You'll have dying stone fruit roots in that area, and if you put that tree in there, like if you pull out an old apricot tree, put a new one in, or pull out an old peach tree, put a new one in that same year, it just won't do well because there's dead body that's totally diseased alongside these roots. So you have to make sure you got a clean hole. Now you don't have to, you can plant it in that area. The research that University of California, Davis did said if you do an area 3 foot across and 1.5 foot deep and just replace that soil with, quote, virgin soil that hasn't planted a stone fruit tree in the last 10 years, you'll be fine. Now, that's for a tree that's going to grow 10 by 10. If you want it to be smaller than that, you don't have to replace as much dirt. 2 by 2, a 2 foot diameter hole, maybe 1 foot deep with fresh soil. With clean dirt should give you, say, a 6 to 8 foot tree. Fertilizer-wise, commercially they don't fertilize the first year. They want the tree sit there, leaf out a bit, get its roots really sturdy in the ground. For most homeowners, we'll go ahead and fertilize it. A good organic fertilizer, this down to earth, one that we like a lot. Chicken's good. Chicken's a good fertilizer. We'll certainly go with that. In the long haul, do add gypsum to around fruit trees also. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. This actually happens to have a lot of calcium in it. So this is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. If they put the calcium number on it, it would be 8. It's got more calcium than anything else in it. So calcium is used a lot in the wood of fruit trees. So calcium, it's a part of wood. It's also a part of fruit development. So we do like, if you don't use this product, add some gypsum later on. In containers, they'll do a little better if you have the Osmocote right off the bat, as the organic fertilizers like this one, which are better in the long haul, tend to take longer to get started in a container than they do in the ground. Yes. You don't need to. Only if you're replanting a place where a stone fruit tree was will you have to do that. Most fruit trees, as long as you don't have compost in it, the drainage is not that critical. You know, they don't like to be waterlogged, so make sure it's not the pond area of your yard that collects water in the winter. But the compost what causes root rot. Wet compost in the ground around the roots causes root rot. So in a pot, you would use our top pot, our pure sand. Now, this size is pretty good size for apricots and apriums and cherries to grow. That's a big pot. Cherries, not so good in containers. Apricots, apriums don't seem to mind how hot these get in the summertime. You know, the ground itself, especially if it's got mulch on it, doesn't usually break 90 degrees where the roots are in the ground. But container soil temperature usually is the same as air temperature. So if it's 110 degrees during the day, the soil in here is about 110 degrees also, unless it's a fabric pot or maybe a big clay pot. They might stay a little cooler, but the cherries do not like hot dirt. So we find if we put cherries in the summer and it's a really hot summer, they just look cooked. Doesn't kill them. Well, it doesn't help them though. I'm sure it's cooking the roots. Apricots seem to be better about the heat than cherry trees are. Cherries do develop branching similar to apricots with the little fruiting spurs all along the branches also. So we kind of trim them the same way. Now when you have a tree that's just a straight stick like this, usually you put this in the ground first and then you trim it where you want the first tier of branches to start. Now commercially, they may not trim this because commercially cherry trees are picked by shaking them. So they have this parachute-like thing they put underneath the tree, and they have some shakers, machine that shakes the trunk, and all the cherries just fall off the tree. So they don't need the tree to be picking height. They can just let it grow tall. But for homeowners, generally, you would cut this, put them, plant in the ground, then cut it. I like to cut them around, say, 30 inches, 2.5 foot off the ground, to have branches at that height. Starting at that height, and your cherries would be a reasonable picking height. Some people might do it at 1.5 foot. That's fine too. So. Mm-hmm.
Recommend that we remove them every year and trim the roots from the pot so that they can root down, or just leave it?
Well, yeah, there are methods of keeping them going. So generally, for plants in a pot, you figure 10 years of good results, and then they go downhill from there. My dad was a bonsai artist, and in bonsai, their goal is to keep a plant in the same pot forever. And so the rules in bonsai would be minimum every 10 years. Some types of plants, they said you have to do every 2 years. But most of them were about every 10 years. You pull the plant out of the pot. Now it's easier because bonsai is not that big. And they would remove with chopsticks about half the soil and some of the old roots too. And then they would trim the top back so that there'd be no shock. A lot of the bonsai plants are evergreen, so they would trim the top back, put new soil in it, put it back in the same pot, go for another 10 years. In big pots, sometimes it's easier after 10 years to start over again than it is to repair them. But some of our customers have gone, they've looked at some of the literature from Europe back in the last century or so, where they had big fruit trees in big containers that had removable sides, wood sides that they can remove. So they copied the plans and made their own boxes that are bolted together. Take off one side, fix the dirt on one side that year, put it back on, even put a new board on there. And then the next year they would remove another side, fix the soil on that side, rebolt it. And they would do that constantly, redoing the soil so that those trees can continue to go year after year after year in the same pot with new dirt. I mean, that's the reason that fruit trees get old in the first place, is that they fill the soil around them with just dead roots of themselves, and over time, 20, 30 years, well, cherries can live a little longer than apricots, but 20, 30 years, they start going downhill because there's too many dead roots around them. So in theory, you can dig a trench or some big holes next to your apricot tree and put new dirt in there and keep them going for a little bit longer. Arborists know this. They rejuvenate trees by digging holes around them, drilling holes or digging trenches radial out from the trunk and filling them with sand, and then fertilizing there, and all the roots just jump in, a new place to grow, and they're happy again. Trimming the roots can be tricky because you don't know if what you trim, if you're leaving dead pieces behind, because the root might go out to the side and go back in. And if you trim it there, you've got dead roots inside now. So it's not easy. I mean, you can see what's dead, what's totally dead. It's just usually slimy and brown, and the rest of the roots are more of a cream color roots. So you can kind of tell what's dead, but sometimes it's hard to get the dead stuff out. Yeah, that can help. I mean, if the soil most of the times the soil expands because of the root volume, especially with ardor, because ardor doesn't shrink. Some potting soil shrink away because they're all ground up wood. Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? Well, here's another organic fertilizer that would work too. There's not many. The nice thing about apricots and cherries, there's not many pests besides critters that want to eat the fruit. If you keep your trees small, there are bags that you can put over the entire tree and tie them up. That'll keep the birds off of them, that let the light through, and they can still ripen. The main thing though is when they're blooming, you've got to have them open. The bees have to do the pollination, and after the fruit's set, if your tree's small enough, you can actually bag the whole tree, or in some cases just bag the branch.
The last year, the wind blew off all of our blossoms, and it was terrible.
No, well, the rain didn't help either. We didn't see many bees out last spring.
Right.
So that wasn't a very good year for a lot of trees because of that. Yeah, citrus do not require bee pollination, so they don't need the bees. But all these stone fruits, most of the fruit trees we have, so so citrus, yeah, you can bag the tree year round. But most other plants, you've got to open up. You can't have anything on them when the bees are supposed to be pollinating them. So yeah, so most of these trees, no significant insect pests unless you have ants around. They're crawling up there, bringing bugs up to your tree. So keep the ants out of your garden. And now last year we had a really bad case of stem cankers on both the apricots and the cherries, but that was primarily from the trees we got in from Dave Olson. So we don't know if that was the fact that they were handling the trees during the winter rains was causing the problem, or if it was the fact that it was so wet all winter, that was causing trunk cankers that were bleeding. Now that people have already told us on their cherry trees they've had these bleeding cankers, most of those are not diseases. So if the sap coming out is clear and has no scent, then it's just sap coming out of the stem. Most stone fruit will leak sap when there's a sudden change in either humidity or rain or temperature. So be aware of that. I've had sap balls right where they're grafted come out this big and nothing ever happened to the tree. It looked like it was bleeding to death, but nothing happened to the tree. So be aware of that. But last year we did have an unusually high amount of bleeding cankers that were causing the branches to die back. And that was actually a disease that was causing that. And that might be because when these things are harvested, they're laid on the ground. And we lay them on the ground too before we put them on display. And when they're laying on the ground, they can pick up more diseases when they have damaged areas. And we're doing a lot of pruning, and we're having to step on them occasionally. And they've been stepped on by when they're transported to us. Okay, yes.
I know you have a PhD class coming up, but how similar are the characteristics and maintenance requirements of compared to your apricots?
Well, peaches and nectarines and nectarplums are the highest maintenance fruit trees. Fortunately, they're the most predictable. Whereas sometimes with apricots, you go, okay, the weather was just perfect, why didn't we get a crop? The peaches, especially peaches, if we get the chill, they got the fruit. So, but they require a lot of more pruning to get the best fruit. So we'll go over that with the peach class. And they require more spraying than any other fruit tree also. They require it. You have to do it to get a healthy tree and a healthy crop. Okay, thank you.